The opinions expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of Eastlink Television, its sponsors, or partners.
Welcome back to the Straight Goods, the Enviroshow. I'm John Abati, your host. We're joined now by the Friends of the Avon River down towards the Windsor Way. We have the chair, Sonja Wood, and their secretary, Chris Mansky. So, Chris and Sonja, what exactly is the Friends of the Avon River? Why were they formed, and how long ago were you formed?
Well, the group got together about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, and their mandate was to protect the Avon River, both sides. We have a causeway that runs across this watershed, and Carrie and Richard Armstrong, when they first got together, were very concerned about how this is going to affect the health of the river.
Okay, we have an air photo of the area showing Windsor, the causeway. So the causeway's there on the west side, on the left of Windsor, which is at the south side of the photo. You see the darker section. What's your concern, and what exactly is the problem there?
Well, again, you can see the barrier, the causeway itself, and on one side we've got a freshwater river, and on the other side we have the saltwater marine river, which is part of the Minas Basin. This river, the Avon River itself, is a known salmon-producing river. It's documented by the IBOF and the DFO. They've realized the fact that the salmon are thriving in this river, and we're able to produce here over the years. Our concern is about the Atlantic salmon and the well-being and safe and easy migration into their habitat, their critical spawning grounds. And the causeway has absolutely no proper fish passage, so that means that there's no style of passageway that will serve many of the species that need to get into the freshwater side of this barrier.
The causeway, when was that built?
The causeway was put in 1969 when they put the 101 highway through into the valley. So it's been there for over 30 years now.
And previous to that, what was with the Avon River? It was a tidal river?
Yes, previous to the causeway going in, it was a marine and freshwater estuary that came together, and so we had easy flow for a lot of the species that would spawn in the freshwater habitat. With this causeway now, it's an impedance, it's a barrier, and we simply are very concerned about how it's affecting the health of the river and as well the species therein.
So, Chris, historically, previously to the causeway, there was migration of fish back and forth, correct?
Yes, it was historically a very good river for fishing. As Sonja mentioned, it was once known, or I don't know if you mentioned it, was once known as the Salmon River. It has since been changed in name to the Avon River, and we now have a salmon river up by Truro. However, the salmon migrations of the last century are well known, and the Avon River was considered one of the finest fishing holes in Nova Scotia.
Are there not gates there? There's some gates at the causeway, correct? And what's the problem with the gates?
Well, the problem with the gate structure is that it remains closed for most of the season. It remains closed during the greater portion of the tides as well. And what occurs is the fish coming up to migrate really need to get a whiff of that source river. They need to smell that fresh water coming out on a full-time basis. The design of this present gate system is such that it maximizes freshwater retention in the pond behind it. So the Lake Pisiquid has been considered something that they did not want any fresh water to get back into. So as a result, this gate is rather tightly sealed. It has boards that are inserted, and as a result, no water comes out during the period of low tide. So the fish who are coming up don't have a scent of their home river.
And they're not able to breed, or?
Well, as a result of not successfully getting up the river, they're not completing their life cycle. And yes, they don't get to breed. In fact, the conditions around the Causeway Gate are sublethal, with suspended clouds of sediment which clog the gills of the fish. So not only do they not really have a clue where they're supposed to go because they can no longer smell their river, they also are heavily stressed by having to stay down by those gates.
Do you guys, now the Causeway was put in for the 101, which is a main thoroughfare, infrastructure-wise. Do you guys have sort of a solution? Do you have options related to,
Well, we've been working diligently with the DFO for the past couple of years now, and we've participated with the IBOF team as well as the river keepers in New Brunswick on the Petitcodiac River. These styles of tides we have are the same as what they have on the Petitcodiac, and working with the Riverkeeper team and the AMAC study team, which was a government-hired expert team to assess the problem on the Petitcodiac. And in fact, they actually came down to the Avon River, and they were the ones that pointed out that there is clearly no proper fish passage. We've been able to determine that with these styles of macro tides that really no fish passage is going to work to suit the many species that would need to migrate up into the freshwater habitat. What we would like to see happen as the group, we would like to turn back the hands of time the way Mother Nature had intended in the first place, and open free tidal flow, which would allow the salt water, the marine water, to flow back into the freshwater, which would be very compatible for the Atlantic salmon and would take a burden of stress off them. As Chris had mentioned, these gates are just not suitable for any style of fish passage. Some fish float to the top and have no problem migrating through gates. Other fish don't like to come to the top of the water and they stay at the bottom. So there's no fish passage here. These gates are serviced for allowing fresh water to spill off from the Lake Pesiquid side, but they don't allow any of the salt water to go back into the freshwater environment.
So with your work through the Petitcodiac group and the other groups related to fisheries, have you come up with any kind of alternative to, say, a causeway? Because right now the Department of Transportation is looking at widening the causeway and putting even more concrete down. Or they're planning on covering sort of that wetland, marshland to the north side of Windsor and the causeway. That's their solution, just widening the causeway.
That's correct.
Your solution, and that wouldn't help fish or any other species for that matter.
No.
Have you guys come up with alternatives to this?
What we're really hoping to do is once the project is started off with the twinning concern, that the DFO would get involved at this point, and we are encouraging them to do a thorough, complete, comprehensive study around the area that we call the sluice gate on the causeway, and to either look at installing fish passage or opening free tidal flow. They plan to put a bridge across there in order to straighten that little stretch out, because if you notice on the picture, there's a bit of a curve on the Falmouth end, so they want to run a bridge straight across there. So if they're going to put a bridge in, my suggestion is that we do this right. Scientists have said that in hindsight, the causeway should never have been built. It's a barrier not just to the Atlantic salmon, again, many species, and it's creating a detriment to the fresh part of the watershed. So our intention is to see a free tidal flow open.
So potentially a bridge.
A bridge.
Would it be, replacing the entire causeway, or just section just wide enough to allow a specific species, or would you want the entire?
This has been looked at with the same problem at the Petitcodiac River in New Brunswick. They have a causeway there which was built at around the same time. They had attempted a fish ladder type design to allow fish passage into the upper Petitcodiac Reach. They have recently finished their studies. An environmental impact assessment was conducted, and the recommendations for the Petitcodiac River are basically a bridge. They have to open up the gates there and replace it with either an open structure or tear it out and build a bridge entirely. But either way, free tidal flow is the only prescription for being able to remediate the damages on this habitat.
So are they actually going to do this? This is what they...
This is now a matter for the minister's discretion. This has been passed back to the fisheries minister, and we await the official.
That's in New Brunswick. That's right.
That's correct.
So really, there's no reason no reason not to do this for the environment. It's best to put a bridge in. It's just a matter of probably cost. Is that what it is?
Correct, yes. It's a very costly endeavor to try and reverse what has already been damaged. But again, Mother Nature seemed fit to have it that way in the first place. And far be it from man to turn around and implement their own ideas in order to have some sort of economical growth. And to what extent do we lose these important and valuable species?
Well, as it is now, really, the causeway has been a detriment anyway. It's lost tidal flow. Lake Pisiquid to the south side by Windsor is almost like a settling pond for the runoff from upstream.
That's correct.
The lake itself is very shallow.
Yeah.
And you may have noticed the mud flat itself is nearly the size of the town of Windsor at this point. And actually the mud does carry on for quite a great distance down the estuary.
And that's a direct result of the causeway itself, because prior to the causeway being there was no mud flat there. It was
there was a normal mud bar you would see at the confluence of two rivers, but nothing of any great extent. Within very few years within the first couple of years after constructing the causeway, the enormous development of mud was apparent.
Mm-hmm. That is a healthy marshland, however. It's very productive with biodiversity. Has been.
Well, it's a new marshland. It's a saltwater marshland that actually grew as a result of this barrier, but it took out 16 other saltwater marshes in the process of erosion. This mud flat, like Chris had mentioned, migrates almost 2 kilometers down the river. It affects 4 other rivers inside of the Avon River: the Kennecook, the St. Croix, the Cogmagan, and the Halfway River. These rivers are all seeing silt moving up into the watersheds now, which is eventually going to create more damage in salmon-producing rivers. We have this documented by the DFO and by the IBOF team. They know that these rivers are salmon-producing rivers, and our mandate is to make sure that these rivers are protected under the rivers that are selected by the Interbay Funding Recovery Team. We know that they've only selected 2, the Salmon River and the Stewiacke River, or was it the Shubenacadie? The Stewiacke. These were the 2 rivers selected by the IBOF team in order to work on their recovery. But our issue is to push the situation on the Avon River Causeway because it affects many other rivers.
Okay, we're just going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming in. Hopefully you can get some support through your email or phone calls. And we'll continue to press the government, and hopefully they'll realize that there's more value to the river other than just creating a thoroughfare for infrastructure. There are options. Bridges will help both the environment and infrastructure. So people check out their email, give them an email, get involved, and hopefully we can protect future rivers in Nova Scotia.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, you guys. We're done.